life can hit like a sledgehammer. But guess what? We hit back harder. Welcome to Affirm That Sh. Somehow I thrive. I'm Jennifer Rogers, your no BS guide to turning life's toughest moments into badass victories. Ready to flip the script? Let's affirm that life can be a bitch, but somehow we thrive. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Affirm That Sh. Today we have a special treat, the visionary behind my dream and bringing it to life and visual creation, Miss Domina Rose. Domina is a powerhouse of bringing the corporate world full front and center, releasing any blocks, any ties, any negativities, and helping you and others reach their potential. Can't wait for you to hear her story. But first, let's dive into Domina's affirmations. And if this is your first time joining us, I invite you to hit like and subscribe so you can come back, listen to Domina's story and affirmations again and again. So now I invite you to find a comfortable place. Take a deep breath in, hold, and let it out. The girl I once was is proud of the woman I am, whole, fierce, and unstoppable. The girl I once was is proud of the woman I am, whole, fierce, and unstoppable. The girl I once was is proud of the woman I am, whole, fierce, and unstoppable. I am in full control of my desires, destiny, power, and empire. I am in full control of my desires, destiny, power, and empire. I am in full control of my desires, destiny, power, and empire. My divine feminine energy is my mistress, full of fantasy, reality, and unforgettable experiences. My divine feminine energy is my mistress, full of fantasy, reality, and unforgettable experiences. My divine feminine energy is my mistress, full of fantasy, reality, and unforgettable experiences. After this break, you'll meet Domina. Stay with us.
Imagine a space where you let go, where the clamor of the world quiets and you meet your truest self. At Yu-Gi-Oh!, through sound vibrations, Reiki, and the wisdom of tarot, we help you release what no longer serves you, align with your energy, and renew your spirit. Begin your journey back to yourself today.
Welcome, Domina. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Affirm That Sh.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for creating the logo for this brand.
You're so welcome. It was such a pleasure to work on your brand. I absolutely love it. Every time I see it on social media, I'm just like, that's super cool. She's doing the shit.
She's doing it and you did it. And that is just a small pebble in the stream of those that you have helped. You've taken corporate dreams, CEOs, and you've launched them far beyond their own potential, releasing some beliefs and some holdbacks, and you've guided people to fantastic realms. But that's not so easy to do, is it? No,
Not at all.
not at all. So I want to talk a little bit about that corporate wounding, because we all think we want that CEO job. We want to be that president. We want all those responsibilities. But is there a world of shit wrapped up in that? So let's go to that for just a moment. When you're looking at traditional corporate environment, how do you feel, or how do you think that has conditioned us to accept normalization and manipulation in the leadership role? And what does it cost us as an entrepreneur in our energy?
So I want to make sure that I'm honoring the question fully because of the slight intrusion. So I want to make sure that I understood it correctly. So basically just understanding like what's wrapped behind the CEO mentality and the wounding behind it, and how to kind of overcome that.
Yes. How does that affect our energy where we've accepted some of that manipulation as normal?
When it comes to corporate wounding, a lot of people don't really talk about this, and this is something that is really near and dear to me because it's a huge part of my own personal journey. Even as I was diving into it during my journey, I realized a lot of things, there's articles on there, people like they're just not really talking about it. And I don't think people are really aware to the fact that it's a thing. And so, first and foremost, when it comes to corporate wounding, it's, if you want to think about it this way, like when you're growing up, you have your own levels of wounding that you are kind of grown into, you're groomed into, you're programmed into, whether that's shame for body dysmorphia, whether that's fear because of a toxic household, abusive relationships, so on and so forth. Now, because our entire economy is based off of corporations, you now bring those types of people into positions of power. And when you put people who are wounded in positions of power, that trickles down into other people who may have never experienced those types of wounds. Then now you're inflicting onto them and you're programming them to have those same wounds. Now, if you are someone who has your own wounding, and then you're also being wounded by someone else, now you're what I call doing trauma layering. So you're adding one trauma on top of another trauma on top of another trauma. And then you combine people in positions of power with trauma, with employees who have trauma, who interact with other employees who also have trauma. And now you're creating an entire corporation of woundedness that when they start diving into, let's say, customer service, they start talking about marketing. That's all coming from a place stemmed in wounds. So that is being marketed out into the world and spreading more toxicity, more woundedness. And in an era like we are in today, where people are just kind of sick and tired of being in corporate because they want to free themselves from that toxicity. Just because you left corporate doesn't mean that you have left the corporate wounding. And so what I find with a lot of entrepreneurs who say, I want to have my own business, I want to change the world, the question that I always pose to them is, how can you change the world if you haven't changed your wounding? And so when that happens, you stem from a lot of insecurities, you have a lot of lack mentality, and you changed the scenario, but dressed it up in different clothing. And so people don't understand that if you really want to be a CEO, if you really want to be that boss bitch or man, whatever,
Mhm.
you have to first realize that if you want to be a true leader who changes the world, you first have to change the world within yourself. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that because how can you go from, depending on how old you are, for me, I'm in my 30s. So how can you go into 30 years of trauma layering, destroy all of that, and feel safe enough to be able to say, I'm going to get onto the other side of that woundedness and become a better person who actually wants to do something worthwhile and meaningful in this world to create more layering of, I don't want to say positivity because I believe too much positivity is also toxic,
Mm.
but more neutrality where you're not affected by the world because you have control of your own world, which then you breathe that into the world. So people can learn how to cohabitate with one another and release this woundedness that we find in our world.
So you recently shared a reel, and I've watched it. I'm sure you've got hundreds of views on this reel about that manipulation and about that toxicity,
Mhm.
the control, the passive aggressiveness, the narcissistic tendencies, all the things that sometimes, as you're saying, can layer upon layer, this trauma layer. And we kind of all mesh and mold into that same spectrum. So I have a question for you in this realm. How has manipulation shown up in your own life and your business journey? And how did you begin to unlearn those habits and those tendencies?
Yeah, some really good questions. So I'll start with my journey on the fact that I have a really strong moral compass because I grew up in narcissistic household, in a narcissistic household, as well as everything else that stemmed from that, whether that was extended family, relationships, intimate relationships, friendships, etc. And when you grow up in that type of environment, you become what you are surrounded by. And so when I ended my relationship with my narcissistic ex, that was a mirror showing me the type of person that I was, which was full of toxicity, which, there's another reel that I talk about where I say that I'm a bad person aiming to be better because I saw the darkness that I really was. And I said, that's not who I want to show up in the world as. And so that became my moral compass to say, whatever I do, I cannot come from a place of woundedness. And every single time I've done something in my work with clients, friends, whatever the case may be, and I do something, let's say because it's just programming, I act a certain way, my moral compass checks me and says, was that really from your place of values? And if it's not, then I go back and I rework whatever I might have caused as damage, whether it's to myself or someone else. And so, because of that moral compass, I've dedicated my entire life to basically say that it doesn't matter what type of woundedness I have within me. It is my duty to myself, but also to the mission of what I aim to do in this world, to be the type of person that has no fear in losing the autonomy of the programming of my woundedness, because that was never my burden to carry. My burden
No.
to carry is the mission that my soul has been destined to achieve, and that's it. And so, within all of the work that I do with clients, people I interact with, it's always stemming from that position of how could I help you see yourself in a light that you've never been shown?
Mm, just empowering them from the get-go. Empowering from the get-go. And that's interesting that you're talking about the clients, because that leads me to something else I want to ask you. And you're helping them through the personal stories, through building that brand, whatever that brand is, because it may not be building something from the ground up, right? It could be just helping them find their own values, their own light, their own shine. What is the first step that you would say someone should take when they're scared to own their story? They're scared to step out of everything that they've known.
I'm going to take a minute of reflection because I've been on this journey for quite some time. And I want to speak from experience what it is exactly that I did to step into that level of fear and say, I've had enough. And I think that's kind of where I'm leading this is when you reach a point in your life where you are tired of repeating the same loops. You have heartbreak after heartbreak, tears after tears, restless nights after sleepless nights, crying yourself to sleep, wondering, what am I doing with my life? That should be a wake-up call, at least it was for me, to say, I've had enough and I don't care about the fear because the pain supersedes that fear. And I'd rather not feel this anymore than to be fearful of what would happen if I don't take that leap. And every single time that I have that level of fear, I always tell myself, is this worth it to be scared? Where is this leading me if I choose to stay in a place of fear? Because I have a strong belief in God, a higher force. And if I know that something at that caliber has my back, then there shouldn't be a reason for me to fear because regardless of whatever happens, it'll always work out in my favor
Or it will work out better.
or better. And I can say for a fact that it always has worked out better every single time I took that leap. So for those people that have that level of fear, if you still haven't reached that point where you've said enough is enough, then you will continue repeating the same patterns until you finally learn your lesson. And that's what it is. Because I've worked with clients and I've let go clients who are just not willing to go there. And I'm the type of person that I will hold you accountable by holding that mirror in front of you and saying, you can do better. You're better than this. But if you're not willing to go there with me, but I'm willing to stand in the fire with you, then I'm not the person for you.
No, you cannot burn yourself to save them.
Exactly.
You cannot. You cannot. I want to ask you, Domina, because your story that you're sharing today about where you've come through living in that narcissistic home, owning your truth, identifying what your values are, and questioning when something comes into play against them. Is this real? Is this fear? What is this? And then taking intended action. There are people out there, whether they're listening to this podcast or they're viewing it, that have been holding on, saying, this is who I've been looking for. Domina is who has been missing in my life. How can someone reach out to you for your services? How can they make contact with you?
Best way to reach out to me would be on social media. So whether you find me on Threads or Instagram, it's at dominarose.x. That would be the best way of communicating with me. If email is preferred, you could also reach me in that way at hello@fearlessxfem.com. And those would be the primary avenues for how you can get in contact with me.
And I might just say your email says it all, that fearless. You are broadcasting that out, heart center and heart forward.
People
And so I want to encourage those that feel called to reach out to you, because I love the accountability factor. I love it. I want to thank you for spending part of your day with us today, shining light on those dark places where we shouldn't be scared to step into and rise above.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time together and spending energy with you.
Thank you. You just took another step towards owning your story and thriving against all odds. This is Affirm That Sh. Somehow I thrived. If you're ready to keep kicking ass, subscribe now and let's keep breaking barriers together. Remember, life's a battle, but somehow you'll thrive.